Okay, guys, the last worksheet in this module, we're going to be looking at markdowns, multiple operations, and perishable goods, okay? And again, there's probably going to seem like there's a lot of different information here. Just know that it's in your module, and also, there's always more YouTube videos. And of course, reach out to me if you just get really lost and need some help, okay? So we're going to start with the first one. It says a blender originally sells for $72 and is marked down to $54. Find the markdown amount. Well, that one, they tend to start out with these worksheets pretty basic. We just subtract 54 from 72. That's all that we have to do there. It started selling at $72. It's marked down to $54. That's $18 markdown amount. And then it wants us to find the markdown percent. And here's the formula for that. You just take the markdown, $18, and divide it by the original price, not the sale price, the original price. So if you take 18 and divide it by 72, you see that you get 0.25. So you have a 25% markdown. That's all there is to that one. Now, the next problem. We say a jacket originally priced at $120 is marked down 30%. And I've sort of started laying out our formulas for us here. Find the sale price. So what you have is the original price times 1 minus 0.30. Because it's marked down, we need to subtract. So you get 120 times 0.70. And you get, I don't know why I put that parentheses there. Y'all just ignore that. You get 120 times 0.70 because you're subtracting from 100 because this is minus. We're going down. We're making a sale price. So the sale price is $84. Okay? You went from $120. You marked it down 30%. And your sale price is $84. Now, let's say it starts to get cold again, and they're thinking, hey, we could mark those back up some. They're going to mark it up 10%. So what you do is you start with your sale price to find the new amount, and you multiply it by 1 plus, because you're adding to it, you're marking up 0.10. So you end up with 85 times 1.10, and you get 85 times 1.10 equals 90. Oh, excuse me. I thought that's not the right answer. This should be 84. See, there's a lesson in that, and even the teacher can make careless errors. So be sure that you go back and check your work. So it's 84 times 1.10, and you get 92.4 is the final price of the jacket. They started at 120. Maybe it rolled into the spring, and so they wanted to mark them down 30%. So you take that original price and you multiply it by 1 minus the markdown rate because you're reducing it, and that gave you a price of $84. Then say it starts to get cold again. These jackets are still in fashion. They wish they had maybe not marked them down so much. They want to mark them back up some. So then you start with your sale price, and since you're going up, start with 84, not 85, and multiply that times 1.10, and that gives you your final price on the jackets of $92.40. Okay. On this next one, it says a store buys backpacks for $40 each and marks them up 50%. So we're marking up, right? So we're going to take our $40 and we're going to multiply it times 1 plus the markup percentage. So we have 40 times 1.50, and that is going to give us $60. $60 was the first price that these jackets were sold for. Later, they take a 20% markdown. Okay, so $60 is the price we're working with. because that was the price of the jackets, and we're going to multiply that by 1 minus 0.20. So you're going to have 60 times 0.80. Because remember, when you're marking down, you need to subtract. When you're marking up, you add. And that gives you a new price of $48 for the jackets. And then, our backpack, excuse me, I'm selling jackets. Then it maybe gets really into school. They think it's, December to February. Nobody's buying new backpacks, so they're going to mark them down a final 15%. So you're going to start with that 48, and then you're going to have 1 minus 0.15, which is going to give you 48 times 0.85, which is going to give you $40.80 as the final cost of the backpacks. Okay? Now this one says, number 4 says, a pair of shoes is on sale for $68 after a 20% markdown. Find the original price. Okay? Well, if the original price was 100% and the markdown is 20%, then the price, the original price, we're looking with 80%. 68 is 80% of the original price, okay? Because there's a 20% markdown. I stuttered a little bit. I hope that's making sense to you. Everything always starts with 100%, right? And 20% is the markdown, and 68% is left. So that means that 80% times the price equals 68, right? Because 68 is still 80% of whatever this number is. And then we do this like we do any sort of algebraic formula. We need to get this P by itself. So we're going to divide by 0.80 over here. We're going to divide by 0.80 over here. And we are going to see that the price, the original price of these jackets was $85. Okay? And now it just wants the markdown amount. Amount is easy. That's just the money. When you're seeing amount, you're just adding and subtracting regular numbers. So if you had $85 to start with, and now there's 68, the markdown amount is what? It is $17. Okay? So that is how you do that one. Now we're getting into the sort of complicated grocery store perishable good things. Okay? And what I'm going to do here, because of the way my worksheet has printed out, and I do not want to be flipping back to pages where you cannot see the original question, we're just going to do our work for this problem up here, okay? And we see that a grocery store buys 800 pounds of apples, and they pay 60 cents per pound. They expect a 12% spoilage rate because, right, when stores are buying produce or perishable goods, some of it is going to spoil before it's sold. So they have to factor that in to what they are paying for the money for the products. They have to factor that into what they're selling the products for, okay? They want a 40% markup. That is something they know they need to make the profit margin that they require. So you got to find first the total cost. Okay, that's pretty easy. They've got 800 pounds, and they pay 60 cents a pound for them. So that's as easy as multiplying 800 times 60 cents. And that gives you $480 is what they paid for the apples, okay? Now we've got to find the total expected selling price. Well, what do we know? We know they want a 40% markup. So we've been learning how to do that. We start with the 480 that they paid, and we multiply that by 1 plus 0.40 because we want to add 40% to this total. So we have 480 is 1.40, and we get $672. $672 is the expected selling price of the apples that we paid $480 for. Okay, now we need to find the anticipated spoilage in pounds. Okay, if we started with 800 pounds and we expect a 12% spoilage rate, then we know that we expect out of this 800 pounds of apples for 96 pounds to spoil. Okay, so now we need to find, with this information, the selling price per pound that we need to charge for these apples to make sure we make the money we want to make. And the way we do that is we take the total expected selling price, which is $672, and we divide it by the available pounds. Now, we don't, not the 96 pounds, but also not the 800 pounds. If we have 800 pounds and we're going to lose 96 of them, right, because they're going to spoil, then we expect that we can reasonably think we're going to sell 704 pounds. I keep writing odd percentages. Y'all ignore that. $672 divided by 704 sellable pounds gives us 85 cents. That's incorrect.